I thought religion was the cause of war.
Yeah.
I thought that anyone that followed a religion was weak. They couldn't make their own decisions.
Yeah.
I thought that Muslim women were oppressed. The men controlled them. I was very much, whatever stereotypical information was given to me,
Yeah.
I went with it.
Yeah.
My journey actually came from a kind of scientific stance, I would say, because I would say that I believed that either you're scientific, you can be scientific, or you can be religious, but you can't be both.
Wow.
Right, and I think that had kind of come from my misunderstanding of Christianity, of this concept of it's the confusion around God and Jesus and all of that stuff. I mean, to me, God was described as a human. He, and especially with the terminology he, right? And so trying to make sense of that, I couldn't do it. I was like, if there's some guy in the sky, and in my mind, he sat in a chair and he had like little angels or something sat around him.
100%.
Right? Let's just be logical about this for a second. Like, he's going to fall out the sky.
Yeah, he's going to fall through the clouds.
Also, how is he still breathing? How is he still alive? Like, none of it made sense. I literally thought it was a whole load of old-fashioned stories. But I had scientific questions that no one was ever able to answer as a child. And I was always the child that got told, don't ask such stupid questions. Like, I was like, my concept of space meaning a space to put something. I'm not talking about the actual space. But like, we understand that everything fits within something. So we know the size of this room, there's only so many people we can fit in this room, right? So size has a limit. But then I started to think about actual space, the universe, right? And I was like, how is it possible to have enough room for something that potentially doesn't have an end? Like, how is there possibly something that doesn't have an end? Like, I could not get my head around it. How comes when we're upset, tears come out of our eyes? Like, no one could answer these questions. Like, where do emotions live? Why do we all have access to the same emotions? Just, and monkeys, this was another thing. I was like, right, hang on. Let me just really understand evolution here for a second. Evolution is when the stronger species continues and the weaker species dies out, right? So if humans are the evolution of monkeys, why do monkeys still exist? Like, there was just so many things that I could never really get my head around. And as I started to, I did believe in a force, by the way.
Okay.
A force meaning things happen for a reason.
Like fate.
Fate, like, you know, when you like think of someone and they call you, or you think of a friend and you bump into them. Like, I'm like, oh, that was meant to be. So, and I think one of my biggest kind of turning points was the question of, if I genuinely believe that, right, what goes around comes around, what's meant to be, all of these things. If I genuinely believe that, what makes it happen? Because if I believe it, then it can't be coincidence. And so I was like, well, there's some sort of force out there that, like, you know, everything's meant to be, da da da. And yeah, one of my pivotal points was reading. I researched lots of religions. I didn't just research Islam, but like, one of the pivotal points was when I read about Allah. It said, Allah. Firstly, I thought each religion had a different god, and that Allah was a different god to God, right? So I thought that all these religions had different gods. So like, it just made no sense why you would be able to choose one over the other. So learning that they were actually all interlinked was one really big thing for me. But then it said, in the English language, you can't say, like, it's rude to say the for something as big as God, right? But so they say he out of politeness, but God is not a he or she.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, no, God's not a person. Like, it's the first time.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me just replace that concept of my belief of God to be force instead.
Yeah.
And I had actually been trying to read different scriptures, and I had, every time it said God, I was like, no, not for me.
Yeah.
No, not for me.
Yeah.
It's a he. No, not for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, I'm going to try and reread it. And like, every time it says God and it says he, I'm going to take that out, and in my mind, I'm going to put force.
Yeah.
And now it all made sense. And I was like, oh, it makes sense. It was just, I completely misunderstood everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
and then it started explaining about the science of how a mother carries the baby in the womb and all of these things. And I was like, oh wow, like it talks about the planets and stuff like that, and it all started to kind of come together.
Wow. But what was happening in your life that caused that search in the first place to look at these religions?
There were lots of people, I'm not going to go into too much detail, lots of people, lots of things I'd done, lots of situations I'd been in, lots of I'm trying to not to reveal too much, lots of stuff that I had done and lots of people that had been around me, which had very negative results, very negative impacts, and like really bad stuff that I realised as I was kind of like reading some of these scriptures. I was like, if me or the people around me had have followed what this says, these problems would never have existed. And even basic things like gambling, alcohol, drugs, like all of these things, like when you actually understand why you're told to avoid these things, like the problems that they can cause in people's own lives, let alone the relationships of the people around them, like it makes sense to avoid them.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the first thing that I started to actually research when I got to that point of God is not he or she, I was like, oh, but what about all the nonsense like man can have 4 wives, women must wear hijab, there was this whole jihad business, like holy war, like all this stuff which I'd seen in the media. They were the first things that I went off to research.
Okay.
And as I learnt about the true meanings and what happened before them and stuff, and I was like, oh, they're actually really nice things, but you have to really understand what was happening before and what was happening at that time when these verses were revealed to really understand the beauty of them.
Yeah, it's about perspective and educating yourself.
Absolutely.
On things.
Absolutely, and not being naive.
الحمد لله